You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
It is Wednesday, January 15th.
Feels like spring outside. I'm very confused.
You think that's spring?
It feels like it was like 45.
Okay, sure, that qualifies. Yeah, it was.
I got to wear less clothes on the bike today, like less layers. It was great.
It was. I didn't bike.
You didn't?
Because I never do. But I did run today,
sad.
and it was nice. It was good weather for a run. So
Spring is coming in January or something. I don't know.
Speaking of spring, conference coming up this spring that we're going to share about. We've been sharing about the Making Disciples for Life conferences and resources, and another one coming up in April. We just had one here, so we'll recap on that and talk about the one coming up in April in just a little bit. Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for supporting the Coffee Hour. Find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
In studio, in the flesh, here this morning, the Reverend Robert Zagore, Executive Director for the LCMS Office of National Mission. Bob, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
It's really a joy.
And the Reverend Dr. Mark Wood, Director of so many things. Let's see, Witness and Outreach, Revitality, Church. What's the word for that?
Just make it up.
Everybody
else seems to. So.
All the things.
It's like, hey, you, come over here. We got something else for you to do. So.
Thanks for being here this morning.
We're changing the name of it to the Kansas City Chiefs, by the way. Instead of revitalization, we want people to know that they can solidly come back for victory.
That's funny.
As long as it's not the Houston Astros.
Oh, do you not get that football reference,
Go
Andy?
sports ball.
Oh man,
I
get that football
I get
reference.
it. I've seen. Yes. Some.
Did you watch the game?
No.
It was fantastic. But anyway,
Had no need of it. Speaking of need, we've been talking about making disciples for life. What is the need for such an initiative? What's the need for making disciples for life, Bob?
Well, we're a church and we need to work together.
fair enough.
And among the things that people among the challenges that people are facing out there are that we're really under fire as a church. We're in transformative times. We're going from a place where it was almost the expectation that if you were a good person, you would go to church, to a culture that openly decries it sometimes. And we often face things in the parish as pastors, as lay people, as others that we don't have resources for. We don't know where to turn, or we don't have time to generate those. But the church throughout the world has been generating great resources for millennia. And what we need to do is take the collective wisdom of the church and the way that she's answered her problems over the centuries and bring it to bear on the problems that we have today. What we're facing isn't new in the world, which means that the church has already come back with productive ways of answering these challenges. And we simply need to make sure that everybody has the resources to do it, and that word life is intentionally ambiguous. The things that the Lord gives us are for our lifetime. They create eternal life, and we also are advocates for the only life that the world actually has.
And I see that there's what is this? Resolutions. We have resolutions in the studio today. This is pretty exciting. I know this
must be official.
This is legit stuff. What is the background? How did this come to be as an initiative? And tell me about these resolutions. This is exciting.
He's going to read all of them.
Please read all of them.
Let me read all of
The
them.
2-hour edition of the Coffee Hour.
Well, there was a resolution at the Tampa Convention that the Synod did pass overwhelmingly. Bob actually remembers the actual number, right?
By 98%.
98%.
Wow.
So, and that resolution, and I will spare you all the details, but it really sets forth how we're going to go about carrying out the 7 mission priorities of the LCMS. And it focuses on 5 areas, and one is evangelizing the lost, retaining the faithful, strengthening congregations and schools, planting new schools and congregations wherever possible, especially in urban and multi-ethnic situations, and then engaging in international mission in partnership with the Office of International Mission. In other words, if you're going to sum it all up, let's go make disciples. And you talk about the need. Remember, Jesus' last words to his disciples in his earthly presence with us were, "Go make disciples of all nations." And it sounds easy, sounds simple, it's clear enough, but it raises a big question: how do we do that, and how do we do it in today's context? So as Bob was saying, we're facing a situation today that's new for us, but it's not new for the church. And we can learn from our history, but more importantly, we can learn from one another. How do we go about this important task of making disciples in the world as it exists today?
Particularly, you mentioned earlier, Bob, the word life being somewhat ambiguous because it can be viewed in two ways. But for lifetime, this isn't some flashy new program that's all about what's hip and cool and what's right now, and that it only lasts for a moment. But this is about making disciples for a lifetime. Is that right?
Well, that's right. American culture today seems to really be about giving thrills now and darned the consequences. You've got candy bars in the checkout lines. You've got corporations sacrificing morality for profits for right now, no matter what it means. You've got baseball teams cheating for right now, and that's not what we're about. We're about lifetimes. The Lord's promises last eternally, but they also last through our lifetime. I think that one of the great miracles that we see is when somebody who is brought to the Lord through infant baptism in their 90s is coming up for Holy Communion in a walker after all they've faced, the wars, the hardships, the sorrows, the economic downturns, the abandonment, the betrayals, their personal sin, and yet here they come. The Lord keeps his promises for a lifetime.
Let's walk through some of the objectives. Let's walk through the objectives of making disciples for life.
Well, anytime we start an initiative, you got to ask, well, why? Why are we doing this? What are we hoping to accomplish? And we do have some pretty clear objectives, even though we expect making disciples for life to continue to evolve and grow, and so we may certainly expect to add to these objectives. But here at the onset, we're first of all looking to improve synergy. There's a lot of things going on in our synod. People are doing different things in different places, and we're not sure who's doing what. If we can work together more effectively, we can make better use of the limited resources that we do have. So helping people to work together, that's a really key objective. Creating greater awareness of existing resources. There's a lot of resources out there, not just what the Synod produces, but what districts and congregations and recognized service organizations and other entities are creating. Let's help people know what's already available. And then identify the things that congregations and ministries need that don't exist, and then prioritize. How do we go about producing these resources? Because there's always more need than there are people to get the work done. So we have to be smart about prioritizing. And then we want to reduce redundancies and cut back on unnecessary repetition.
I like your alliteration.
Because people don't know what's available, they often go out and create things, and then they're creating things that, hey, they find out later, oh, somebody's already done that. So by better communication and dialogue and meeting together and talking with one another, we can learn about what's already there before we go off and create something that's already been created. And then that leads to the key objective here, and we talk about it, especially in terms of the gatherings that we are planning, and that's to listen to, learn from, support, encourage, and love one another as we carry out Christ's mission to make disciples.
It's a lot of working together, a lot of trying not to reinvent the wheel. I know when we're in our own church bodies, in our own congregations, it's it's hard to see, or maybe people just don't know how big our church body actually is, and how many really smart people have come up with ways to solve problems or to approach situations, because a lot of us are in the same situations across the country. How will people interact with these? We have these great objectives, this great initiative, but how are people going to actually be able to interact with this initiative?
Well, one of the first ways just happened. We had Conference Zero, our first try at these Making Disciples for Life regional conferences, and the goal is to transform the way that we teach, transform the way that we share information together. A big part of these conferences was that we had subject matter experts, church leaders, the president of Synod, and many of the officers of Synod sitting at tables talking to the conference participants about the subjects that they wanted to bring up, that they wanted to know about. And this was so far the most highly evaluated portion of it. I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but the idea is that we're making ourselves accessible to one another. We also have learned through studying it that the typical way of doing continuing education hasn't had much impact. Harvard University did a study about medical doctors and their continuing education, and the title of the study was "Doctors Don't Get Better."
Oh, good. That's reassuring.
And they made a bunch of recommendations about how you can improve continuing education, and we've incorporated a lot of those in the Making Disciples for Life conferences. But as we look at it, it really comes down to this: people have to be interactive. They have to be involved in what they're doing. They can't just get an information dump, and so we need them to be participants, and that's what these conferences emphasize. Development partners, we're testing out good ideas in congregations and getting feedback about how they work, how they helped. Think of it sort of as a resource evaluation, like on Amazon. How many stars does this get? And then you've got the reviewers down below who have tested it out, and they say what their experience has been. And then we've got the Internet Resource Center, which is different than a normal website because it's driven by artificial intelligence. It provides the resources, leads you to the resources, and if you can't find what you're looking for, there's a little button in the corner that connects you to the Church Information Center, where real live people talk to you using their voices. And if they don't know the answer, they'll hook you up with one of our subject matter experts.
We're talking about Making Disciples for Life with Pastor Bob Zagore and Dr. Mark Wood. We'll be back in just a moment and do a recap of the recent conference here in St. Louis. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
Hi, I'm Pastor Mark Hawkinson, host of Moments of Assurance. Jesus said, "If anyone enters by me, he shall be saved." You can help us continue to get that message out around the globe while there's still time. One way is to become a church or organization of the week. For a gift of just $595, your church will receive 35 30-second announcements during the week of your choice, identifying your church, as well as upcoming events and happenings. And your pastor or a representative from your church, they may record those announcements, or we can produce them ourselves. Either way. In addition, your pastor or representative will have the opportunity to be on one of KFUO's programs. It's a wonderful way to expand your mission outreach and to help KFUO Radio to do the same. For further information, call me, Mark, at 314-996-1520 or mark.hawkinson@kfuo.org. Hi, I'm Pastor Mark Hawkinson. You know, life is a potpourri of good experiences and really tough challenges. Through all those times, you need, and so do I, the Lord's precious word and sacred music to get you through. That's what you get when you tune in to Moments of Assurance. Christ-centered songs, scripture, news items, trivia, humor, you name it. So tune in. You'll be richer for it over the noontime hour here on Worldwide KFUO.
Moments of Assurance is underwritten by Mid-American Coaches.
It's time for the next Law and Gospel broadcast on Wednesday to be a Bible Study Wednesday. Gives an opportunity for congregations to listen in for about a half hour and then talk about what we have to say. And we have a very interesting topic to discuss on the next Law and Gospel.
Listen to Law and Gospel weekday mornings beginning at 9:30 on KFUO.
Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
It is Wednesday, January 15th, and we are talking about making disciples for life, a great initiative of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. Started with a resolution at the most recent LCMS convention in Tampa. And what does this mean? A favorite Lutheran question. What does this mean? Talking about how this is an initiative, an emphasis on truly collaborating to make disciples for life, for a lifetime. And so most recently had a conference here in St. Louis, Conference Zero. We're talking with the Reverend Bob Zagore and the Reverend Dr. Mark Wood of the LCMS Office of National Mission. All right, Mark, why was this Conference Zero?
Well, because that number wasn't taken. It was a way of informing people that this is not something that's been cast in stone. We didn't come at this like, here, we know how to do conferences, we know how to do these kind of things, and we're going to do it, and you're going to come and you're going to sit and you're going to listen to us. By billing it as Conference Zero right out of the chute, we are saying, look, we're trying to find our way through doing things in a new way. We want to create an altogether new kind of conference where you don't just sit and get information dumps, but you participate, that you sit around the table with people who have the same concerns you do, have the same interest you do, have information to share, have ideas to share, and we really wanted to be a conference that lay people would bring their pastors to. So by calling it Conference Zero, we were conveying a message. This is something different, and also it's not done. It's taking shape as we do it. So come help us shape it. Come help us make it what you want it to be.
It's like the pilot episodes. You wait till it airs to see what's going to happen.
That's right.
But when all these people were in the building, there was quite a buzz in the building those few days that people were here.
It was pretty spectacular. We didn't know what we were going to get. We had backup plans for filling the building if we needed to, and we wanted to make sure that people came.
Some extras on standby.
It was funny, though, because before we even got the website completely ready to go to register people, we had half of the conference filled. And as soon as the website went up, we filled up that next week. It was something that the church was waiting for. We could have had an entirely different conference with just the people that we turned away or that were on the wait list. Mm-hmm. We had so much desire to be a part of this within the Synod, which I think talks about the realization that everybody has that we need to be working together. We need to be doing these things that making disciples for life stands for, and we need to help each other do it. It was also not just high energy, but high excitement, high happiness. People were so happy at this conference. It was. I had to check to make sure they were really Lutherans.
You said excitement. Wow.
Emotions.
Lutherans were excited.
We have another series about excitement. And anyway. But yeah, I mean, there was all this excitement, all of this knowledge sharing, and I think when people get together and share knowledge in person, it's such a different experience than Googling something and hoping you get the right answer. Actually, being able to have conversations with people and know that the people that are here, that are presenting, that are leading these table talks, are subject matter experts. They've been through it. They've done these things, and they're able to share their knowledge in a way that you may not be able to get in other places. What's the feedback? Is there feedback from participants? What are people saying about this?
Oh, yeah, there's been a lot of feedback during the conference. I think the thing I heard most often was, wow, I didn't know we had that. I didn't know about that. This is great. how do I get this? And so people creating awareness of existing resources was right at the top of the list of things that people were taking away. But the other feedback was people were sharing, and they were saying, "Wow, people are actually listening to me," which is great. I mean, that's one of the things we really were aiming to do, is convey the message, because sometimes you just hear that it's like part of. They're like, "Oh yeah, we're going to really listen to you." We actually really did listen to people, and they seemed surprised and then excited and then glad to share.
In one of my sessions, we had scribes taking down what happened in every session, the resources people wanted, and the kinds of comments they were making, and the interaction that we had. And I had some, after I introduced the scribe in one of my sessions, guy looked at me and he said, "You really are serious about listening."
Imagine that.
So what did we learn? What are some of the things we learned, especially in the tabletop sessions where they were intent on listening?
Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday in our directors meeting, and we have learned quite a bit. A couple things that we have taken away is we need to spend more time talking. We need to actually probably narrow the topics down so that we can get more in depth on some of these things. And we've learned that there's value in doing this. There's not just making people feel good, but actually learning from one another. It has a tremendous amount of value. And then providing the opportunities for people just to interact outside of the tabletops was very valuable too. We weren't sure. We actually planned long breaks in between sessions to give people time to talk to one another. And we kind of stood back and watched and say, is this going to work? And we saw that it did. So
it's like extended coffee hours at church.
It is. It is. Or like this show.
Hey. What was some of the feedback, some of the things that you heard, Pastor Zagore?
Well, what Mark said certainly was some of it. I asked everybody, and I think I talked to all of the participants from outside the building at one point or another during the conference, and I asked everybody, why did you sign up? And they said, I wanted to see if the leaders of Synod really were listening, really cared, and I wanted to meet them. And the after-conference evaluations from some of the same people were, this was great. I can't believe they care. I felt like we were all alone, like nobody was paying attention. And so it's more than caring. We want legitimate solutions. We want to really work together. We want to change the culture of Synod to one of collaboration and to get rid of some of the element of competition that we have living among us. And this, I think, was a great first step in learning that we really do care about one another. What Jesus said about loving one another really is true here.
That's good. So this was conference 0. Does that mean there is a conference 1, I guess?
Double zero.
Double zero?
0.1.
What is next?
Next is conference 1.
Okay.
So we've conference 0 was a great learning experience. It was a wonderful start, and now we want to take it and let it become larger. It was very limited the number of people could come here and be part of this. We want to make it more available so more people can participate. I don't think we'll ever stop learning how to do this better, and we'll continue to evolve it. And well, now I said synergy and evolve in the same show. I mean, I'm going to get
You're
really
up on
bad
charges already.
Yeah,
I'm going to do it myself.
All right. So, but the conference is going to keep growing and changing to meet the needs of the people who are attending. And so our first conference 1, the official launch of MDFL conferences and gatherings, is going to be in Fort Wayne, Indiana, at the Concordia Theological Seminary campus in April 16th through 18th. And we're really excited about going out there in to Fort Wayne and engaging with even more people and having these conversations expand.
So what can we expect and at the Fort Wayne conference. Here at Conference Zero, we had about around 100 attendees. Is that right?
We had 162 people total, and in Fort Wayne, I think we're probably going to try to cap the attendance at around 300. We had what we called Day Zero here, where we had the leaders of Synod talk about what they learned. The Day Zero for this conference will be some of the ministry events. We're going to have the disaster relief folks talking about what they do, the specialized pastoral ministry chaplains and other folks that do specialized pastoral ministry are going to hold their conference there. And as long as we have a life director by then, we're going to have some elements of our life conference there as well. And so that's going to start it off, and then we're going to start these tabletops again and these information sessions where people interact with each other in order to really elevate and learn the great things that are going on within the individual congregations, some of the solutions that they have to our mutual problems. And I'm really excited.
How do we register for the conference number 1 in Fort Wayne?
You can't do it yet, but you can do it next week. Online at lcms.org.
Very good. So next week, check out lcms.org. Look for the Making Disciples for Life banner on the page, and you can register for the conference there and make your plans to travel to Fort Wayne, Indiana, or if you live in Fort Wayne and the surrounding area, to be a part of the Making Disciples for Life conference.
And don't forget that, this is not just for pastors. It's not for the professional church workers. They're certainly welcome to come. We want especially our lay people to come to these and bring your pastor, right. Because making disciples for life is a call for the whole church. When Jesus calls us to make disciples, and so the members of the royal priesthood have opportunity to come together and learn and grow and share in this loving and important work.
Reverend Dr. Mark Wood, the Reverend Bob Zagore, thank you so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour today.
Thank you.
Oh, great to be here.
I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.